Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about hardcore. I had a lot of things I wanted to say. I honestly just felt like rambling today. I don't have any like strict notes for this video. I really just have a little bit of an outline I made in front of me. But I wanted to talk about hardcore season 8, what the future holds for hardcore, just what I think about hardcore being such a focus in DDO right now in terms of SSG. And yeah, let's just talk about it. And yeah, I know that my nose looks like Santa Claus's nose at the moment. I had stitches taken out today, and it's just all flared up. So yeah, it is what it is. I initially was going to just have gameplay footage because of that for this video, and then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I really don't care. I really don't. So yeah, you can either look at me or not. Anyways, let's talk about the Hardcore Season 8. So, Hardcore Season 8, it was a season I actually participated in. So, the only other Hardcore season I had participated in prior to Season 8 was Season 5. And in Season 5, I just went for level 20 and 1750. Season 1, I played a little bit just for fun, but didn't go after any rewards. But this season, I actually played all the way on Hardcore Season 8 from level 1 all the way to level 32. I got all of the rewards except for the 20 Reaper points. I did get the 10 Reaper point reward, not the 20. But let's just talk a little bit about my journey there and what I thought about it. And okay, so this season, for me, and I think for a lot of players, it always comes down to what are the rewards on Hardcore. Because for me personally, I don't play DDO really to like achieve cosmetics. I more play DDO just to develop my character and the archetypes I enjoy playing, that I find fun, and to be the best I can be at whatever archetypes I enjoy, whether that's a CC wizard or, most notably like a melee cleric or whatever I feel like playing. But I really don't play to get cosmetics, even though I kind of enjoy cosmetics, but I did want the footprints, which is the main reason I played this season, was the footprints. This season, Hardcore Season 8, was the easiest by far way to get footprints. Before that, they had been available in Season 1 and then the Redux season of Season 1. I forget what season that was, maybe 6? I can't remember. But in those seasons, you could get the bloody footprints, but this season you could get the muddy, well, the golden footprints. I think I've seen some players call them the muddy footprints. But yeah, but I did achieve that, which is nice because that's a very unique cosmetic. You cannot get anything else like that in the game. They for those y'all don't know, it's like a trail of footprints that follow your character and then they disappear after some time. But I did get those, so that was the main motivation for me to play. I initially was going to just go for those footprints and then pick up the 1750 for the golden eyes along the way. The golden eyes fit my character really well, being a cleric, and I usually have like a gold theme going with him. So that was the other reason, but yeah, mainly the footprints. So let's talk a little bit about build choice, and I think also the footprints being so easy to get. By the way, I think that's one of the reasons by every measure I can see, based on SSG's comments, it seems to be a very successful hardcore season. Seems like a lot of people jumped in for those footprints. So let's talk about builds a little bit. So in hardcore this season, there were quite a few builds that were popular. So you saw so many Blightcasters for whatever reason. I know Blightcaster is really meta right now. So I saw tons of Blightcasters. Saw a lot of Blightcasters seem to die, but we saw tons of people choose them this season. For me, myself, I think the most important thing when you are playing on hardcore is you want to play a build you're very familiar with, because you know how to optimize it. You have experience, experience where like what are the tough situations, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this build. You have a good sense of what you can survive and what you can't. So for me, I chose something I was very familiar with, which is a paladin. So I played a paladin, and I ended up doing a Sylvanas Maul paladin just because I am so familiar with Maul Sylvanas builds. I know what all the good Mauls in the game are. I know what enhancements I need to take. I know how to play a two-handed fighting build really well, so I went with that. Why did I go paladin? Similar to Season 5 where I went with a great sword human paladin, I did go with a PDK Maul paladin this season, but two-handed fighting because it's just great for DPS and most quests, and to have that strike through. I still think for melees, I know for in-game boss beaters it's different, but generally for leveling, I still think two-handed fighting for melees is the way to go, because that strike through is just so good for DPS and standard quests on regular mobs. So Yeah, so if you are going to play hardcore, I highly recommend you go with something you are familiar with. So that was my plan, just pick something. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to pick the most meta build, but I did go Paladin because Paladin over Cleric, I mean, Paladin is, I think if you're going to go melee on hardcore, like I think Paladin's the way to go just because you do get amazing survivability with the Sacred Defender tree. You also have good DPS with the Knights of the Chalice tree, and you also get all those nice Paladin DPS spells, you know, things like Zeal and Holy Sword and such. Those are really nice. But yeah, I think it's definitely the way to go. You get the self-healing, you get Death Ward, some really nice buffs as well. So, and it did go very well. Like if you want a build that does good DPS, but also is not going to die, I've got it like 2-handed fighting Paladin on hardcore is like amazing. I loved the build on hardcore. The only downside of playing that build is you don't have much utility. So for example, can't really, like you can't do traps really. You probably don't have any great skills for hitting certain skill checks and quests. You don't have ranged DPS, so it's good especially good if you can pair up with, say, like a trapper, a ranged DPS, which I did. I actually played this season. I actually had a static group of a couple awesome dudes. We played together for basically the whole season. There was 3 to 4 of us. We had some deaths along the way, but it was awesome. I highly recommend getting a static group if you can. If you are soloing on hardcore, you are playing the game in ultra hard mode. Like you gotta group. Like do not solo on hardcore. You can do it, and I have soloed quite a bit, but it's just so much harder because all the monsters are going to be focused on you. You have to get every single trap, so you got to build all this stuff into your character, like trapping, DPS, and healing. You can't spread around the responsibilities. Everything's going to be slower because it's just a lot faster to run quests in a group because you can split up objectives, and it's just a great idea if you can. And if you don't have a group, literally like go on the forums before the next season 9 starts. Probably going to be Q4, by the way, if you're wondering. Go on the forums before the season starts. Try to get a group together. The great thing about hardcore is you don't have to worry about being on a different server because you're all going to be on the same server. So try to find some people who are in your time zone and get a group. Can't recommend that enough. Regarding the build, if you all want, like, let me know if you would like to see me do a build video on the 2-handed fighting Paladin I played, then let me know and maybe I'll do that. So regarding scary quests, so there are a lot of quests on hardcore that you just don't want to run. You don't want to run them on hardcore because they have some kind of insta-kill mechanic, some way to easily die, like for example, like what goes up falling down the holes and what goes up insta-kills you, or there's some weird mechanic that you may need to be reminded of. So like prisoner planes and giant hold, if you click the docent twice at the end, it insta-kills you. There's things like that. Not necessarily that you should avoid running the POP, but I would say avoid anything where you get instant death. And it's good to reference some kind of list. And I actually created a list on the hardcore forums on DDO.com, and I'll put it on the screen now, of scary quests or things you need to be reminded of on hardcore. So just be aware of stuff. I saw so many people die on hardcore this season just because they forgot about some little mechanic. Or they forgot. Another big one is death block. Like death block is like so important on hardcore. There are so many situations where mobs are casting insta-death spells at you, like prismatic spray, like for example in Feywild, just one to name one among many where you need to wear a death block item. I mean, even if you have an awesome saves through the roof, you still need a death block item because you can always roll a 1. If you roll a 1, it doesn't matter what your save is, you're gonna fail, unless you have one of those feats that make you not fail automatically on a 1. So this season in particular, there was no 5K reward, 5,000 favor reward. The highest favor reward was 1,750. So this season in particular, there's no reason to run. So all these scary quests, there's no reason to run them. Anything that's super hard for the level, no reason to run it. Unless you're going for leaderboards, which I wasn't this season. I don't care about the leaderboards. If I run hardcore, it's going to be for the prizes. So the other thing about hardcore I want to talk about is traps. So traps is like the #1 by far killer on hardcore. And that's why this season, and if there's a future season where there is no 5K favor reward, unless you care about the leaderboards, I recommend you do what I did and just run everything on heroics on hard. So that's what we did. The other thing about heroics is there's some of the content I'm not as familiar with, but we just ran it on hard just to be safe, because there's such a huge difference between elite and hard, and you still get 2/3 of the favor, by the way, and you still get hard streak for 25% bonus. You don't get the full bravery bonus, you only get half of the bravery bonus, but still, on a first life character on hardcore, you're going to level just fine on hard. So that's one thing I would say. I highly recommend just sticking to hard. So many people this season stuck to elite, even in heroics, just leveling, even though there's no reason to. The 25, the 5K reward was not there this season. If that holds true for future seasons, there's no reason to do elite and take on that risk. I mean, I know that elite's not that hard, but there's no reason to take any chance of dying in these quests. And even on hard, you can occasionally run into an issue where with a champ where you get crit or something, but it's so like it would have been really difficult for me to die on hard. And on hard, we really only had one scary moment in our group the whole time, possible where we could possibly die. And some of the players in my group, they weren't like exactly running the tankiest of builds. So if you were running a tankier build, it probably wouldn't have happened. But that was our strategy, run hard. And then when we got to epics, we did up it to elite just because we're all so familiar with that content. And I'm very familiar with the epic content as compared to the heroic content. So we went in on elite, and we were just figured we'd do it to level faster, and we weren't really scared of any of the traps because we knew where all the traps were. So in that case, we just did it. Plus, we'd already met our main goals, so we didn't really care to take a little bit more risk. But anyways, we did do, and maybe it probably wasn't the smartest looking back. We should have probably just stuck to hard for safety reasons, but since we're so familiar with the content, we just set elite anyway. And at that point, we were kind of in the screw it mentality. We don't care if we die at that point. Now, we did get to end game, and the thing about, if you want to go for the Reaper point rewards, I think it makes by far the most sense to not do any Reapers until you get to end game, because when you get to end game, you can run legendaries on Reaper, which gives you a huge bonus to your Reaper XP. So what we did is we ran Reapers once we got geared. So there is a process if you run on hardcore. If you want to go for the Reaper rewards, what you got to do is you got to get to cap. Once you get to cap, then you start grinding gear on elite, hard, or hard if you want to, but probably elite just because the drop rate is a lot better on elite versus hard. But you run elites, in-game stuff, you get your gear together, and then you start on Reapers. So I did grind out a 5-piece Silo Dread and 5-piece Saltmarsh set. Saltmarsh in particular, we can talk about that in a minute, but Saltmarsh in particular is like amazing for hardcore, just because how easy it is to farm versus the power level. It's not like the best gear in the game, obviously, but compared to the time it takes you to farm and the price of say rerolls and such, it's just awesome option. So I did go for I did get a 5-piece Silo Dread, 5-piece Saltmarsh set, and then we as a group ran R4s and really didn't have any issues. We had a pretty good group. We had a tank and a healer. We had trappers. We had DPS people like me. So we did fine, and we just stuck together and played cautiously. And we had very few close calls on R4, but it really doesn't take too long. Like if you want to go for the 10 Reaper point rewards, once you get geared out, if you run R4s, it's really only going to take you I think it took us 2 sagas and like 3 more quests on top of that, all on R4 to get the 10 Reaper points. It's about 100k XP, Reaper XP for 10 Reaper points. So if you want to go for that first reward like this season, where the cloak was really cool, I will say that the 10 Reaper point cloak was probably my favorite cloak, might be my favorite cloak, one of my definitely top 3 favorite cloak that I've ever seen in DDO. So it was cool and worth it this season, but that's definitely what I'd recommend. So let's talk about gearing a little bit. So gearing, like what should you do regarding gearing? Leveling up, I didn't gear at all. The only thing I got was when we got to Red Fens level in Heroics, I did get a 2-piece Red Fen set just because it was so easy to farm, and that's one that, along with Saltmarsh, are much better on hardcore compared to the regular server because of their ease of farming. So you get your selection of you can get the Red Fens loot on the in reward list for the quest, so it's really easy to get like a 2-piece Red Fen set, and a lot of them are pretty nice. Like Elder set's good for casters. I use the Claw set on my melee. That's pretty good. There's some other good gear there, but that's one thing to particularly to pay attention to. One thing I wouldn't recommend doing much is staying at a level and farming gear. Like, for example, I think a lot of people would farm out, say, a heroic Feywild set to level with. I didn't find that to be necessary, especially if you are running on hard, throughout heroics. Even if you're running on elite, I just don't think it's gonna be necessary, especially if you're running in a group. I did just fine, just basically picking up what I could and buying stuff off the auction house. Just made sure I had all my bases checked. Have your deadly, have your fortification, have your death block. Have your. You will want to get some kind of weapon. You can get a salt marsh weapon really early in heroics. You can get a Feywild weapon later on, and then of course when you get the ability to get to Ravenloft to go through into the mist, you can get the Barovian weapon, which is free. So that's like a huge power upgrade, and that'll get you to 20 if you're on a melee. I forget, is it called a Barovian weapon? Whatever the ones are called when you get from the NPC right after Into the Mist. I forget. I think it's around minimum level 10. I think is the minimum level for that weapon. But you can run Into the Mist on casual and get that weapon. That'll coast you to 20. So it's not. I just think that it's just not going to be worth your time. Heroics aren't so hard on hard or elite that you can't just wear what you find. And the problem with intense gearing is if you do die, it's gonna really set you back in terms of time. Because you would have invested so much time into the character. So to die after you've grinded out like a Feywild set or like a Ravenloft set or even like Sharn, like a 3-piece Sharn set or something could be really detrimental. Whereas you can just level a lot faster. Like I saw a lot of people, especially people posting on the forums, complaining about ransack and such on hardcore, saying, oh, there should be no ransack because I can't get my gear, so I can't keep leveling without this gear. But you don't need to have certain gear to level up. Like honestly, you will do fine if you're on a caster. Get yourself a spell power item, insightful spell power. If you can get insightful spell power, get yourself a spell lore item. Get yourself fortification, HP items. Other than that, you should be fine. Just be careful on hard and elite. It's not like you're leveling on Reaper, so you'll be fine. What else do we want to talk about? Let's talk about Saltmarsh gear though, because Saltmarsh is a bit of a different beast. So Saltmarsh, you can. I don't think it's probably not worth it to grind out a set to use in heroics just because you'll outlevel it so fast. But it's really nice to have Saltmarsh for epic, and then later you can upgrade that into legendary. So if Saltmarsh is awesome because you can actually grind that gear out on an alt character. So if you just get an alt character up to level 5, you can grind yourself out a Saltmarsh gear set. And the awesome thing about that is you can easily upgrade that to epics. So when you get to epic, you can upgrade that, wear it in epics, and then you can upgrade it again when you get to level 30, and you can grind out all the materials you need to upgrade on an alt character that's level 5, and you got no risk. Well, very little risk, because if it dies, it's not like your main character is dying. And also, if you want to do rerolls to get the loot fast, you can do them. And even on Elite Saltmarsh, it costs you 3 astral shards to do a reroll. That's so much cheaper than, say, trying to reroll legendary chests. You're going to pay like, what is a legendary chest reroll? Something like 15 shards, 16 shards, something around there. I'm not sure exactly, but it's just way easier to run that stuff and farm that stuff out on Saltmarsh. So that's the great thing. That's why Saltmarsh loot is so good. And the other thing you want to keep in mind, if you do want to, say, get a 3-piece red fen set and use it in epics, you want to make sure you grind out those materials before you pass that content and get past the level lockout, which this season was 2 levels over. But generally, what I did is I just stuck with my red fen set, and even through epics, I just stuck with the gear I could get. And of course, you have your options of some other good weapons at minimum level 20, like a Borderlands weapon you can get, which is fine. What else do I want to talk about here? So let's talk about I guess close calls this season. So as I mentioned before, I didn't have any close calls, really didn't, the whole season. Like the Paladin really was awesome. I even ran through a few traps. If you saw, I actually posted a video about, let's see, I think it was about 6 days ago, as of the day I'm uploading this, that had a compilation of all of the close calls from this hardcore season of my group. So if you want to check that out, see some of the, basically a highlight reel of hardcore. It's not that long. I think the video, it's like 6 minutes long. But if you want to check that out, I'll put a link to it in the description. But let's talk about now, close calls. So did I have any? No, but you can see, well, except for one in Korthos, which was, I walked into a trap and almost died, but it wouldn't have been a big deal at that point because we were in Korthos. So I would have lost like in half hour at most. So, but there were some for the group I was in, so you can check out that video for some. So one thing we did do though, which was really fun, which I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this again in the future, is we did have a raiding day at the end of hardcore, which was fun. It was a really cool experience to actually raid on hardcore, just because, you know, raids are really hard. Well, it's not really hard, but it's really hard when you can only die once. So we did get through about 5 raids, and we lost a bunch of people along the way. I did happen to survive those, so fortunately, I still, as of now, I can say I've never died on hardcore still, and I played through 2 seasons of it at this point. You know, season 5 I leveled to 20. This season I leveled to 32 and 10 Reaper points, even running R4s. Still haven't died, so I'm kind of proud of that. Not a huge deal, I guess. And technically I did actually die in season 1, but I killed myself just so I could experience what the Land of Lost Souls looked like. So it didn't really count. Not a character I was actively, seriously playing has never died. So what do we want to talk about now? Let's talk about the future of hardcore. So let's talk about the 5K favor reward. So this season, they did away with the 5K favor reward, which I actually think is a good idea. My whole issue with hardcore is it's very time consuming, especially the 5K favor reward, especially someone like me who I do work a 9-to-5 job. I don't have all the time in the world. I do play other games sometimes. I do stream other games. Also, I don't want to completely abandon my main server during hardcore. I still host raids every week on Saturdays. By the way, here's a link to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AxelAlexK. Every Saturday, I start streams at 1 p.m. and I host raids on Atlantis every Saturday at 3 p.m. So I don't want to stop doing that. So it's not like I had to devote all my DDO time to hardcore. So going for a 5K reward is something that I'm never going to do. It doesn't matter how much I like the reward. It's just too much. It's just too much time. It's just too much grind. Is it challenging? Yes. Because it's a long time to play and not die, but it's more grindy than challenging. So I actually really like them getting rid of the 5K rewards. Not that I'm totally for challenging rewards to go after, but I think there's other ways they could challenge players without having to introduce a ton of grind and so much more time than I think the average DDO player has. Sure, there's amazing players who can probably get to 5K in a week, but for most players, to get to 5K, assuming they don't die, it's still probably going to take them a few months just with the time they have, even if they devote like all of their DDO time to hardcore. So for someone like me, it's really not doable. So some other ideas, and I've talked about this a bit on other YouTube videos, but some other ideas that I've had is, how about, like, I don't think they'll do this ever. They would never do a Reaper only season, because I think that would gate too many players out of, for SSG from a financial perspective, it wouldn't make sense to do a Reaper only season, because they're basically gating out a lot of players who aren't interested in Reaper mode from potentially, profiting from, them making some money off hardcore. And, we should talk about that in a bit, actually. Reaper, the financial impact of Reaper, or not, the financial impact of hardcore, not Reaper. So they probably won't do a Reaper only season, but I would love to see, I don't know how they would code this or if it's possible, but I would love to see, like, let's say like a level 10 tier reward. So if you get to level 10, you get this reward, but the caveat is you have to play everything on Reaper at level 10. I don't know if there's any way they could code that, but that way they could do some kind of Reaper only challenge without gating people out of the normal difficulties who want to stay with that. I don't think they can do that, though. I'm not a developer, but from the technical standpoint, it's probably hard for them to do that. That's what I would think. But one thing they could do to increase challenge is, this season they had a 2-level lockout, so you couldn't be higher than 2 levels over the base level of the quest. They could even do a season, how about where the lockout is at level, so you have to run everything at level. That would make it more challenging, for sure. That's something they could do, and it wouldn't gate people out of, say, just running normal if that's what you want to do. Granted, you could still run stuff like at normal or hard leveling, and it still wouldn't be that challenging, but it would be more challenging, I guess. So that's something they could possibly do. The other thing is, does hardcore necessarily have to be permadeath? I don't think it does. There's other things they could do. One thing, for example, that they have jokingly thrown around is the possibility of having friendly fire on, for example. That would be cool. However, obviously with friendly fire, there's a big potential for trolling and for griefing. So if they do that, it would be awesome for them to do like a, how about a shortened season? Because it would be a gimmick. I think that would it would wear off really quickly. The how like the specialness of that on hardcore, I think would definitely wear off quickly, and it would also discourage grouping. But I think a some kind of friendly fire on season that was shorter, maybe just a month, but make it not permadeath. So that's something they could do. They could do something wild like that, or some other kind of treasure hunt type season that maybe doesn't necessarily make it a lot more challenging than season 8 with finding things, but maybe make it so it's not permadeath. Maybe make it shorter. I just don't think that every season necessarily has to be permadeath. Permadeath is great, but there's a lot of other ways they could mix up DDO's rule set and in the way we normally play DDO. So let's talk about, I guess, how much money I spent on hardcore this season, which was basically none. So I did spend, I think I spent around 1,500 points or so. I did buy a batch of shards, which was most of them, so I could do some rerolls. I never buy rerolls on the regular server, but I did buy some this season just to save time. And I did buy some augments, and I bought a Slayer pot, but that was it, I think. Yeah, I think that's all I bought. But I think, and that's the interesting thing about hardcore, is it actually got me spending some DDO points, whereas I normally don't spend, I hardly ever use DDO points, to be honest, unless I'm buying content. But that's the interesting thing about hardcore, though, is it does really get players to spend more money in the store, and that's I think that's actually quite a good thing, because SSG has found a new route of monetization. And me, as for those of y'all who don't know, I am an accountant, and that's my 9 to 5. I would love to dig into SSG's financial statements. Unfortunately, they're a private company. We can't see any of that, but I would be so curious to see like what the spending trends are, who buys what in the store, how much players are spending on hardcore. But by all everything we can tell, I mean, it seems to have been a financial boom for the game. That seems to be like for sure what's going on with hardcore. But it's great that the game has found a way to support itself better. And I thank all you all that are supporting the game by actually going out there and spending some points on hardcore. I hope none of you all are being irresponsible with it. Like, don't sell your house to buy +8 tomes, Supreme tomes on hardcore or anything like that. But it is awesome to see people actually supporting the game through hardcore. But let's talk about, what was I going to talk about? I think we wanted to talk about DDO's like monetization in the future of hardcore. So what else could they do with this? Certainly they can keep mixing up the cosmetics, which they should do. I would love to see like more helmets, for example. They might want to get out of the pattern of just maybe have different tiers. Does it always have to be 1750 favor and like level 20? How about a reward for level 32? That would be cool. There's not been a reward for reaching the true cap, just for reaching the heroic cap. That would be interesting. I would love to see them, if they continue with this trend, if they want to do more favor rewards, maybe do one for 3K, maybe if they want to do a higher tier favor reward. The thing about having the 5K favor reward, it does also incentivize players to spend money, because you would have to obviously buy, like most of the packs would be VIP. And that's the other thing also that is really good for SSG financially about hardcore, is it basically forces you to be VIP or be in a static group for VIP. But you basically have to be VIP. I mean, you don't technically have to, but no one's going to spend like, it's just going to take so much more time to level on normal. You can level on normal, and granted, I did level on hard, and by the time you get to epics, you can open on whatever difficulty by the time you get to epics. But to not have elite or hard open first life is pretty detrimental. I don't think most players are going to want to deal with that. Plus you get more XP for being VIP. But it really incentivizes VIP, which is good, I guess, for the game. Although that said, since I'm thinking about VIP, they really need to get those VIP changes into the game pretty soon. I believe it should happen mid-August, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, I think that's about it. Yeah, let's see. I mean, the only other thing I want to say is I really actually enjoyed hardcore. I've actually spent so much more time playing DDO in hardcore season 8 than I spent playing DDO in a long time. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. And tell me in the comments, like, what was your hardcore season like? Did you play hardcore season 8? Did you reach your goals? How was it for you? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? I would be interested in reading that as always. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed this kind of more rambly type video that's a little bit longer. And yeah, that's going to be it for now. I want to say thank you to Patreon supporters, Brent Erickson, Ryan Alsey, Rouge Rogue. By the way, if you want to support me on Patreon or whatever, just look in the description and check out my link tree. By the way, I have links in there to all my other stuff like social media, Twitch streams, Discord. I have a Discord for those y'all who don't know. If you want to join the Discord, you can check that out. And yeah, my music linked there, whatever else you want to check out. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.